Welcome to Dinner with a Doc. We have Dr. Lindsey Merritt joining us today. My name is Dawn Hutchins, and I'm the owner of a company called Veggie Cooking. And I am joined by my co-host, Heather Borders.
Hey guys, Heather Borders. I am a registered dietitian and owner of Kylo Nutrition here in Jacksonville.
Okay, so Lindsey, we're so glad that you're here. Would you just do a quick introduction and, let me admit one more person here, and tell us a little bit about your current role.
Dawn, Heather, thank you both so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you guys here on this platform. My name is Lindsey Merritt. I am a gastroenterologist. I work here in Jacksonville with my company called Borland Gruber. My practice involves general gastroenterology as well as advanced or therapeutic endoscopic procedures. So kind of a wide variety of GI issues. But my passion is gut health and plant-based medicine. So that's why I'm really excited to be here and talk with you both.
Well, we are really excited to have you. So how this is going to work is that we're going to review a recipe. You provided us a recipe. So Heather and I have both made that recipe. So we're gonna ask you a little bit about that. And then we'll have you tell us about your plant-based journey, talk a little bit about GI health, and then we'll do this rapid fire questions about lifestyle hacks. So tell us, this is the my version, I don't know if you guys can see me, of the dish that we made. It has cannellini beans and mushrooms, and I did some kidney beans, and it's got all kinds of really yummy stuff in here. So tell us why you love this recipe so much.
So I love this recipe, most importantly, because it's super easy. It's also a great dish to you can prepare a really large skillet, and it's a great dish for groups. And sometimes I find myself, especially when I'm entertaining groups who maybe are not fully plant-based, what can I make these people, but they're going to be satisfied with and not think is one of my strange vegan options. So this is a great recipe to kind of make for a group. Everybody can kind of dig in and eat it with a nice baguette, and it's really delicious. I just love that it has such a Mediterranean feel and feels kind of like spring summer dish. So I thought it was perfect to share tonight.
Oh yeah, the sun-dried tomatoes are awesome.
Yes, and I'm going to add that I did not have cannellini beans, so I used chickpeas, and I also didn't have artichokes, so I used hearts of palm. So super yummy, and I added a little kick. I put some red pepper flakes in there, and it's amazing. Oh, and I threw in like 2 cups of spinach. So we always have to have a reason to put in some more greens. And so, but otherwise I did follow the recipe. I made a few swaps and I added spinach. But just as a testimony to how simple this is, we need to mute.
We're getting, we're getting, let's see, hang on guys. Oh, let me see if I can mute.
There we go. All right. So just as a testimony as to how easy this is, I would like to let you guys know that my kitchen is now like destroyed. I am in a process of remodeling my kitchen. And so we literally have nothing in our kitchen. So I made this with like a cutting board and a skillet on a hot plate in my dining room. So
that is impressive. And so for anyone that's just joining us, we've just had a bunch of people join us. We're just reviewing the recipe that Lindsey sent out to us, that we are trying it. Heather and I tried it beforehand, and we're going to send out this recipe to you afterwards in the replay. So don't worry if you didn't get a chance to look at the recipe yet, you'll get it in the replay. Okay, so are we ready to move on to our next item, Heather?
Yes, I do believe so. I will say one quick thing. Please, if you have questions, just write them in the chat and then we will get to them before the end. But we definitely want to make this about what you guys are interested in. So feel free to drop any specific questions or even general topics, and we'll get Dr. Merritt to go ahead and try and answer them. If not on this call, then maybe as a follow-up. So, but other than that, let's do it.
Awesome. Okay. So, okay, Lindsey, you are back up. We would all love to hear about your plant-based journey and how and why you chose to go plant-based.
Oh, I think like most people, it was kind of a long process of adjusting to the diet. But basically, when I was in college, I started to educate myself about animal agriculture, and it was kind of a new an area that I knew nothing about. And so when I kind of started to learn about the processes of factory farming and all of the environmental impacts and concerns for, humane treatment for animals, that was really the driver for me initially deciding to become a vegetarian. So that was about 17 years ago now. And then I did that for almost 10 years and was, happy, felt great on a vegetarian diet. But then that was kind of during my medical training. And so going through med school and residency and then GI fellowship. And through that process, of course, with an eye towards, everything focused on optimizing health, I really kind of started to incorporate with incorporating that mindset, I really learned about kind of the benefits of removing other animal derived products such as, eggs or dairy. And so became predominantly following a vegan diet since, I would say maybe for the past 7 years. So, it was a process, and over the past 7 years, it has been far from perfect, but as I go, I'm, you learn every day that you come up with new recipes, just like the one we just talked about. And so it's a process, but it's something that certainly aligns with, my goals of optimizing health and also, following a compassionate diet for all other reasons. So.
And did you notice a difference from being vegetarian to going vegan in your health and wellness?
It's interesting because I thought that I felt great. I mean, I was in my 20s and had, tons of energy and I did, feel really well on a vegetarian diet, but making that switch, I didn't know how good I could feel. So how much energy I could have, how kind of, little things like breakouts or, like small health issues that might come up here and there. I mean, all of that kind of really went away with the transition. So
did you see any GI differences yourself? Was that one thing that maybe you had seen?
I would say, I guess I was fortunate to not really have many GI issues beforehand. So I can't say that there was a huge distinction, but just more, just general, optimization of health.
Okay. Well, let's, I guess, move on to then talking about GI health in general. It would be really, we've got a little feedback there. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can tell who that is. Hey, you guys, if you have just joined us, please hit mute on your phone or computer. And we want to make sure that we can hear Dr. Lindsey. Okay. Oh my goodness. All right. Can you guys still see me?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. All right. So yeah, we just would like to know about GI health, maybe some of the things that you see regularly that you help treat your patients with, and then that connection between diet and treating some of these diseases, the fact that that's not, is that normally done in gastroenterology, or, so kind of covering that kind of diet and disease connection as well.
Sure. So, I mean, we could talk all night. So I tried to kind of make my talk a little bit concise into categories. So, so I wanted to talk about, top 3 things that a person that can destroy your gut, top 3 foods to consider eliminating if you're wanting to achieve optimal gut health, and then the top 3 things you can do to really optimize gut health. So that's kind of what I wanted to focus on. But just as an introduction, I mean, gut health is so much more, it's such a broad term, and it really, to me as a gastroenterologist, conveys your overall health. Because if your GI system is not working, nobody's happy, nobody's feeling well and out doing their best in the world. So that's really where I try to focus on really intervening with my patients and focusing on, okay, what foods are you putting into your body? And, we've got to think about, based on what the fuel you're giving your body, what are you expecting as an outcome, and what can we do to tweak things and really optimize the way that a person is feeling. So to address your question, one of the most common issues that I see in practice that I think most GIs would agree with, and even primary care docs, is an entity called irritable bowel syndrome. And it kind of falls into this, broad category where, there are certain criteria that a patient meets to be diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome, but it essentially encompasses just general GI upset after eating, bloating, change in bowels, constipation, diarrhea. So kind of the gamut of GI symptoms that you can't otherwise put a label on and treat with a medication fall into this really lumped kind of broad category of irritable bowel syndrome. And there's a recent paper that I just was looking at today. More than 40% of people worldwide have what's considered to be a functional GI disorder. So kind of falling into this category. And so it obviously affects quality of life and healthcare usage, and is so easily treatable if you take the right dietary and lifestyle approach. So that's, one of the most common things that I see, and it really boils down to the health of the microbiome. And the microbiome is, kind of a buzzword these days, but just to kind of simplify it, the microbiome refers to the gut bugs that are residing in our intestines, and specifically in your colon, the large intestine. So what we want is a really healthy population of good gut bugs that are working for us 24 hours a day, providing us with tons of nutrients that, more than we even have identified at this point in medicine. And so to be able to optimize our microbiome, there are certain things that we can do to help that, and then certain things that we can do or that we can be exposed to that can really harm your microbiome. There are endless studies. The microbiome is involved in, has been linked to cancer, autoimmune disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and essentially all chronic diseases. And the gut bugs, the healthy gut bugs in your colon, not only are they there, fostering healthy population, but the reason why they're so important is because they are producing beneficial molecules and chemicals that are then being dispersed throughout our body to have positive downstream effects. So anything like, protection from cancer and essentially all of the chronic diseases that I just listed can be accomplished by these molecules. So for example, a lot of our gut bugs will produce something called short chain fatty acids, and one of those being a substance called butyrate. And butyrate travels throughout your bloodstream and can affect anywhere from your brain to all over systemic, have beneficial systemic effects. Another bacteria strain called Akkermansia is responsible for producing the mucus to line your gut, which is our protective barrier. So without having the Akkermansia in our colon, you're going to be set up for lots of problems and leaky gut and all of that. So fostering a healthy gut microbiome is of utmost importance. And I should add too that that in addition to the diseases I mentioned, there's obviously a very direct correlation between microbiome and inflammatory bowel disease, such as ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. And there's great data that to me is really exciting that we can positively impact and even induce disease remission with dietary changes. So that's how important your microbiome can be for your health. So on that note, what are top 3 things that a person does in our modern world that are kind of gut health destroyers? One is called dysbiosis. So dysbiosis means a dysregulation of the microbiome. So you've got this colony of organisms that we're wanting to foster. And if things are out of whack, if you have too many bad guys to good guys, you have something called dysbiosis. And that can be caused by a variety of, probably endless list of things, but some of the big ones are infections, overgrowth of bacteria or fungal organisms, living in our kind of over-sterilized modern world where we've kind of lost connection with nature and being surrounded with the outdoors and the symbiotic relationship with organisms all around us. So that's kind of a big one. Exposure to GMO foods and products. Overuse of antibiotics is a huge one, a huge factor that can be detrimental to your health. And it can be an immediate effect, or it can be a downstream effect. There are studies looking at children who are exposed to antibiotics before the first 3 years of life, and the increased risk that has for them, increased lifetime risk. So way down the road for asthma, allergies, inflammatory bowel disease, all sorts of things that are just now starting to be linked together back to that initial antibiotic exposure. So it really does affect the population long-term of your gut microbiome. And speaking of antibiotics, it's important to realize that the vast majority, up to more than 80% of antibiotics that are used in our world are used in animal agriculture. So when a person is eating conventionally raised meat, they're ingesting antibiotics as a byproduct of that. So you may be thinking, hey, I haven't taken antibiotics for any health issues, or, for 5 or 10 years, or maybe ever. But if you're regularly being exposed to antibiotics in your food by eating meat, that's a really important factor to be aware of. Finally,
press 1 to record your message.
Finally, medications. So medications are also a gut microbiome disruptor and can cause dysbiosis, and things even seemingly so benign as aspirin or Tylenol. All of those things can really cause issues with your gut lining and disrupt the microbiome. So the second category would be along similar lines, but it would be toxins. So toxins are something that unfortunately all of us are exposed to. Things in our environment, heavy metals such as mercury, pesticides, and things like emulsifiers and additives to food. All of those can be internalized and affect our gut lining. So things like glyphosate, which is the ingredient in Roundup, that actually when ingested, which is sprayed on conventionally grown crops, when ingested, it actually has antimicrobial effects on our microbiome. So it's almost equivalent to taking an antibiotic when you are ingesting large amounts of glyphosate, which any conventionally raised or conventionally produced or processed food is generally going to have some amount of, unfortunately. And then there are emulsifiers that we I think most people don't have an awareness when they're eating any sort of processed food. And it doesn't have to mean processed, doesn't have to mean junk food, just any sort of food that comes in a package, generally has some additive to kind of create, whatever the consistency that they're trying to achieve with that product. But the downstream effect is that emulsifier can travel within your gut lumen and really wreak havoc on your gut lining and create essentially leaky gut, allowing for inflammatory molecules to pass your protective gut barrier and infiltrate into your body. And then the third topic or area is really important in, that can really be a factor in destroying your gut health, is actually stress. And this is an underrated area. People think that stress, it isn't going to have a physical manifestation, but it very much does. And there's an entire enteric nervous system, which is a communication between the gut and the brain. And there's a bidirectional feedback. So stress impacts your gut, just like the health of your gut can impact your brain and your emotional health and mental health. So for example, a gut with dysbiosis has been shown to have to create inflammation, which disrupts the tight junctions of the gut lining, and that allows molecules to pass beyond the wall of your gut and be absorbed into the bloodstream where they're not supposed to go, and that can travel all the way up to your brain and create cognitive issues, neurologic issues, even like depression, anxiety, all of those things. So there certainly is a definite relationship between the two, and stress management is so important. So that's kind of to summarize the things that can destroy your gut. So now moving on to kind of more proactive ways to be more proactive in protecting your gut. We'll talk about the 3 things that you can do to really support gut health. And essentially, I broke it into 3 things because, it's not, everybody likes to have a list of, 3 things that they can remember and think about, but it essentially all boils down to fiber. And there are 2 types of fiber. Fiber is it comes in both soluble and insoluble form. And the way that they work together is amazing. So the insoluble fiber goes into our stomach and then passes into the small bowel, which is the first part of the small bowel called the duodenum. And the insoluble fiber kind of creates a matrix. So if you think about something like celery, like the stringy texture of celery, picture that kind of going in and laying the framework, getting all those strands kind of laid down, coating your duodenum, your small intestinal lining. Then the soluble fiber, which is a little bit more gelatinous and kind of can become more of like a gum-like texture, that travels in and finds that framework and then fills in all the gaps and makes like a nice paste or glue, kind of coating the intestine so that it slows the absorption of sugars and other nutrients so that you don't get a rapid glucose spike when you're eating. That's why it's different. That explains the difference in eating a fruit in its whole form coming with the soluble and insoluble fiber versus drinking a glass of fruit juice. You're going to get a huge spike in your blood sugar if you just drink the glass of fruit juice that has the fiber removed. But if you eat an apple or an orange and you've got the pulp and you've got the texture and the fiber, that's going to go in and have complete different absorption, different effect on your blood sugar, and not result in that same spike. So that's just one way that fiber helps aid your digestion, but eventually the fiber works its way down your intestine and travels to your colon, where it basically is a feeding frenzy for your gut bugs. So your gut bugs receive the fiber. That is their food. That's how you populate and foster a healthy microbiome, is by feeding your gut fiber. And with the fiber, that's how the gut bugs can do their work and create all of the byproducts and short chain fatty acids and nutrients and all of the things that then they'll disperse around your body and have all of those beneficial effects. So fiber is essentially is a prebiotic, and that means that it is food for your gut. And then we can talk about probiotics, which are helpful to ingest. They're important to take in, but not necessarily in the form of like a capsule or a powdered probiotic, more so like a fermented food. So that's where, kimchi, natto, tempeh, kind of all of those things, miso, all of those things can be really great complement to a healthy diet.
That was actually one of the questions that we got was
perfect.
About what your thoughts on probiotics are, and are they as beneficial as they are promoted to be? Because, you think about that is kind of is that sort of like an easy way out that really isn't as beneficial as we think it is?
So the thing about probiotics, there are a couple of things. I'm somewhat hesitant to recommend probiotics to my patients because for multiple reasons. So one is that we don't know enough yet about what is going on in that person's microbiome and what specific strain might they be able to take that could be helpful to them. There's just not that we just don't have that data there. We have general strains, if somebody has awful, say, blue stools or diarrhea, we have general strains of probiotic that that can be helpful for, kind of optimizing that while their gut is kind of being restored. But short of that, there's not really enough data to say if this, then this in terms of probiotics. And there's hundreds of thousands of strains. So, that's the biggest reason why I don't recommend it, is because we don't know yet which one to recommend. The other thing.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, so my question would be to follow up on that is what is the protocol to repair the gut after we've had exposure to antibiotics?
So in specific settings, like if you've taken antibiotics and you kind of want to help give your body that boost, I think then a probiotic is appropriate for a short period of time while you're also fostering your healthy microbiome with feeding it the food that it wants to help your gut bugs grow back and become, strong again.
You're basically just advocating like probiotics have a very specific role in specific situations, but this like panacea recommendation for taking probiotics just because they exist isn't necessarily isn't necessary.
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing that we know about probiotics is that they only last while you're taking them. So we don't know yet how to take a capsule, a probiotic, and have it create, populate the community in your gut and create a long lasting effect. We basically see the changes in the microbiome while you're taking the probiotic. And as soon as you stop, it goes away and you tend to go back to your regular or your, initial populations.
So we see a question here that says, what is the recommended daily amount of fiber? I know the dietitian point of view, but I'd love to get the GI doctor point of view.
So that's, I guess I look at that as, yes, there's the recommended daily amounts that, to be honest, they're like so low. It's like 15 for women and 25 for men or something.
It's shifted a bit. I think it's 25 for women and 38 or 35 for men. So
okay, that is new nutrition knowledge that we have not yet established in medicine. So that's awesome. Those are the numbers that make a lot more sense to me. So if a person is really a person that wants to track and count their food and keep track of their fiber, then I shoot for a goal of 30. For man or woman, just minimum of 30. That's kind of going to allow you to probably get a really good diversity of fibrous foods throughout your day and really focus on prioritizing fiber.
Do you know what the average fiber intake is in America?
I'm going to guess like
you want
10
to guess?
grams.
I was going to say it's usually 10 or less.
Wow. I was going to say 12, but yeah, 10.
Mm-hmm.
Not even.
And, supposedly we always talk about paleo or keto. And the irony is that back in those days, people, it's estimated that they had easily over 80 grams of fiber a day, easily.
Yeah.
And we can't even manage 10,
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
That's exactly the difference. Yeah. We reference, kind of the caveman diets and all of this, but it's like, because it was predominantly still fiber.
So if you have patients that say, okay, I take my 30 grams that I need to have, I'm going to eat 3 Fiber One bars. Then what would you say to that, or whatever's in a Fiber One bar?
So then we have a conversation about whole foods and the benefits of eating food in its whole and unprocessed form versus a Fiber One bar. I don't want to, I try to meet my patients where they are. So I don't want to discourage anyone from who, is motivated to make some changes. They want to start ramping up their fiber. So, okay, if you want to find like a nice whole grain, high fiber cereal, maybe, sure. But I try to emphasize that the goal is not to turn to processed grains that have kind of had all the grain torn apart, all of the three pieces of the grain that are so important, ripped apart and then put back together in different quantities, because that's just not absorbed the same way. That's not providing you the maximum benefit. So rather than taking a Fiber One bar, I try to have my patients, in addition to focusing on plants and really fruits and veggies with, some whole grains, but really focus in on the fiber from fruits and veggies. I try to also say that if you feel like you still need a boost, or particularly if you're having, a GI issue like a altered bowel habits or something, I will definitely always recommend a fiber supplement. And my go-to is a whole psyllium husk fiber.
Mm-hmm. So over something like Metamucil, which seems to be like the common go-to.
So Metamucil, most formulations of Metamucil, the active ingredient is psyllium husk, but they do grind it down. I prefer the whole husk itself rather than the kind of pulverized powdered form. And then, of course, in Metamucil, most of the time they have, dyes and artificial flavorings and all that kind of stuff. So
it's amazing. You have processing of processed versions of things.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
And I can also put a link afterwards to maybe I think I bought a version maybe on Amazon or something.
Yes,
let's see if I
would
can
love
find
that.
it.
I'll send you the handout. I went online, found a picture, printed it out, and it's my handout go-to that I give to all of my patients. It's so awesome.
That would be
It's
amazing.
so simple, but I will send that to you.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, we'll take it for sure. Excellent.
So the last thing that the third thing, so we've covered as far as the three things that you can do to support your gut health. One is prebiotics, aka plant-based fiber. Fiber only comes from plants, by the way. It's not present in animal products. So if you're eating plants, you're getting your fiber, and there's no need to stress out about counting it, because eat until you're satisfied and you're getting your fiber requirement. So one is prebiotics. Two is probiotics in the form of fermented foods, and for a select certain situation, a probiotic supplement. But I really would advise someone to speak with their provider or clinician to kind of see if they can help guide them, at least to say what probiotic might be the best strain for them. And third are polyphenols. So that is becoming more and more, the hot topic, if you will, is to talk about polyphenols, because they're essentially all of the antioxidants and vitamins and minerals that we know to be beneficial all come in the form of polyphenols. So polyphenols are the components that make foods colored. So when we say eat the rainbow, somebody, when they developed that saying, way back, knew what they were talking about, but we just didn't know about polyphenols yet. Polyphenols help to essentially kind of fertilize your gut. So they provide all of the good stuff that your gut bugs need on top of already noshing on your fiber from your diet.
Okay, cool. So could you give us some examples of the soluble and insoluble fiber? I know you mentioned celery and kind of stringy fiber, but maybe just give people an idea of just eating the variety, and that might help.
Yeah, absolutely. So most plant-based foods, when they're in their unprocessed form, come with a combination of soluble and insoluble fiber. And that's really what you want. There's not one that's better than another. There's, data showing soluble fiber is the one that's typically credited with decreasing cholesterol, let's say, or that's, kind of Cheerios made that famous, like, because they have oat in their cereal. They said, okay, so eat Cheerios and you'll decrease your cholesterol. But really, you want to eat the foods in its whole form. So if you wanted to optimize, let's say, your soluble fiber, you could eat whole rolled oats. or other, a lot of grains have a lot of soluble fiber, but again, in their whole form. So of course, like brown rice has way more fiber than white rice, for example. But really, you want to focus on fruits and vegetables. And I mean, I picked celery because it's easy to visualize, the kind of the stringy texture, because the insoluble is the one that doesn't quite break down in your digestion, but essentially all fruits and veggies have fiber, and both kinds.
Okay. And Heather, did you have any more questions?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always curious about trends. And so, you talked about IBS. What are some of the GI conditions or diseases or symptoms that you feel like we're moving towards? Like maybe it wasn't a big deal or wasn't very common, even just 5-10 years ago, much less 20 years ago. And now this is like a thing. And you're like, why didn't they talk more about this in school? And you've had to even like learn about it.
Right.
Because I know I've seen things like that in my practice. And I feel like there's a lot of things that are up and coming that is not quite a buzzword yet, but it will be.
Yep, absolutely. So as far as, I love that question, because it's there are so many, unfortunately, so many diseases that are on the rise in the GI world. Inflammatory bowel disease is a huge one. Ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, both incidences are increasing, and it's one of those that, if you kind of go back and look at some of the things that we've talked about and the things we're exposed to in our environment, all of these things are playing a role, and it's so heavily intertwined with the health, again, of the microbiome. But we're only kind of coming to understand that piece of things. So I think that that's going to fortunately become much more useful in terms of treating these diseases as well. Another one that unfortunately is on the rise and in younger and younger folks is colorectal cancer. And again, colorectal cancer, if you kind of go back and look at dietary factors that are well established to be increased risk factors, it's all the things that that we've talked about in terms of that destroy the health of the gut. So is that the start of creating, the cascade of events that have to happen for a polyp to form, then have a malignant conversion, then become, a colon cancer? So increased intake of processed meats, low fiber diet, sedentary lifestyle, smoking, alcohol, heavy alcohol use, all of those things are associated with increased colon cancer risk. And what we're seeing is that this is now happening in younger and younger folks. And what's also on the rise, of course, is obesity and unfortunately all of those dietary factors.
Yeah. Okay.
Another one I would say, since you asked kind of like things that are being kind of rapidly researched because it seems to be on the rise and nobody really understands fully why, are kind of eosinophilic issues. So there's something called eosinophilic esophagitis, which is pretty well established, but it used to be considered a pretty rare issue. It's kind of a microscopic inflammation in the esophagus. It can interfere with a person's ability to swallow, and kind of cause a host of other issues. But it's now being the prevalence is certainly increasing, and there are now other entities like eosinophilic gastroenteritis, and so it's kind of becoming a more downstream in the lower in the gut prevalence as well. That is.
Are you, obviously it's interesting, like when people see a dietitian versus a GI doctor, they're kind of expecting different things. And I'm just curious, in your patient population, where you're seeing a lot of these conditions that are heavily influenced by diet, do you, and I'm assuming you talk to them about diet, do you find that they're open to it? Do you find that they're not, taking the path of like, this is just my fate, or this is my genetic makeup and this is what it is? Do you find that people are understanding, like they actually do have control over their health in the GI world?
So I think that, I would say overall, yes, I love the patients that I get to work with. Somehow we find each other and kind of tend to have a common ground in terms of how we view health. And then most of my patients are very motivated. So they're coming to me asking for help because either they feel so lousy or they're concerned about developing some disease or issue down the road. And so they're coming to me from a place of feeling motivated to generally make some changes. Now, of course, everybody has different levels of motivation and whether they're wanting kind of an easier, quote unquote, easier fix or a medication versus a whole revamp their whole lifestyle. We have those discussions and I try to just meet people where they are and make small tweaks to get them closer to achieving, their health goals.
So I think that's a perfect transition into our rapid fire lifestyle hack questions. Dawn, you want to take the first one and then we'll just alternate from there?
Let's do it. Okay.
Right.
What are your favorite local restaurants and what is your favorite dish at those restaurants?
So, I am so grateful to have been connected to the both of you because we have gone out and explored some plant-based restaurants and we've got a whole bunch more on our list of places to hit in the area. Of course, the restaurant Sushi Co. Was amazing, fully vegan sushi menu. And it's always fun to go to a place like that and just be able to order unlimited on the menu and not be concerned about, what might be in, the item that you're ordering. So that was an amazing experience. I love that restaurant. We'll definitely go back. My go-to restaurant is probably True Food Kitchen. And I love it because the ambiance is really nice. And sometimes fully plant-based restaurants can be a little bit more of like a lunchtime, like deli style ambiance. So I think that, the really nice sit down, modern kind of fun environment is a really cool place to go. Their menu is so varied and they change it seasonally. So I just love, going kind of quarterly and get to try the new things on the menu. And also, because I'm often dining with people who may not be fully plant-based, but are maybe open to it, or maybe we just all want to go out and have, a meal that makes us feel good because it's healthy. And so that's kind of my perfect go-to spot for all of those things.
I love both of those for sure.
Yes, I love it. I love it. All right. So what is your favorite minimally processed packaged food?
Okay, so does nutritional yeast count?
Sure.
Like it comes in a package and I use it every day.
Yeah. That is a good
How
one.
do you use it?
I use it to, I'll either use it almost just as like a Parmesan and just sprinkle it on top of anything I'm eating, especially, pasta or anything. I'll put some olive oil, some nutritional yeast and do it like that. If I have a little bit of time, I will throw it in the blender with either some cashews and water and garlic, or last night I put it with tofu and garlic and some salt and blended it up and made kind of like a tofu cheese for lasagna I was making. So it's kind of my go-to, always have plenty of nutritional yeast on hand because you can do endless things with it.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah. Okay. What is your favorite plant-based money hack? How do you keep your costs down?
So I kind of laughed at this question because I am terrible at sticking to a budget because I'm obsessed with trying any new vegan product that I see. I want to try it. I want to know how it is so I can recommend it to patients. So any like new cheese, plant-based cheese that has come out, I bought, like recently I found this company online. I think they're called Provisions, and they make deli meats. And so they had like 6 or 7 different flavors. And so, of course I had to try all the flavors to see how good they are.
Of course.
So because of that, I'm probably not as great at being budget conscious, but really though, trying to stay, reasonable and wanting to be, make plant-based eating accessible. I would say that prioritizing, if you're looking at buying produce, I would say prioritizing buying the clean 15 versus the dirty dozen type thing. So if you're wondering, what's really worth it to spend your money on to buy organic versus what can you get away with buying conventionally grown, I would reference the dirty dozen, as most fruits are listed on there. So greens, berries for sure, all of those things are worth buying organic, but the rest of produce probably is generally fine to do conventionally grown. And so of course there's a cost savings there.
Okay.
All right. So we know that, oh wait, did I already ask that, or was that your question?
That was my question. I think it's yours.
Okay. So we know that you are a physician, a very busy physician. You are a wife, and I believe your son just turned 3.
Yes, he did.
So you have tons and tons of time on your hand, right?
All the time in the world.
Yeah. So what would you say is your best time hack for eating healthy? Because, I always tell people it really doesn't take any longer to cook plant-based food, but it does take a long time to prep food. And that's where people get tripped up. So where do you save time in your very busy life? So
as far as saving time and thinking about, because the question is always, kind of what are we having for dinner? So I realized that I kind of think about my go-to meals. So I have, maybe a handful of things that I would make on any given night when I don't have a ton of time to try a new recipe, let's say. So I kind of narrowed it down to things like a pasta, a pizza, salad, grain bowl, and maybe tacos. So tonight we're going to have tacos. So my method is kind of, I'll think about, okay, if we're going to do tacos, what things do I need? And basically it's just providing that template. So it takes away the stress of feeling like, oh my gosh, I have to go chop a bunch of veggies and make some creative dish. It's like, no, I'm going to get a tortilla and fill it with anything. So it can be black beans one night. So next week it can be mushrooms. Then it can be, I make a walnut sun-dried tomato, kind of taco filling. And so, you can vary the ingredients and keep it interesting, but keep it really simple. And so, so that's kind of, I guess I don't know if that's a hack, but that's my approach. And I think, that it takes a little bit of time to get there, because people that are maybe making the transition or are learning to, wanting to kind of come around to eat more plant-based foods, they're used to all of their templates in their mind are all meat centric. So it's just switching that over to, okay, instead of whatever that might be, instead of pot roast tonight, we're going to have a pasta dish. So all you need are noodles and then just any veggies you have on hand. So I would say that kind of just that mindset shift is really helpful. And the other thing is having staples always on hand. So I guess keeping in line with the dishes I've mentioned, I always have a ton of lentil-based pasta noodles. So I'm ready to go with that, and then can add, toppings, or I have the tortillas in the freezer. So just, kind of having the staples there, so that whatever you decide to make, you can throw together pretty quickly.
And do you always cook? Are you the cook in the house, the chef?
Yeah. I say that I kind of make a face, but I love cooking. So it's kind of it's a de-stressor for me. So I come home and it's just, there sometimes is a time crunch where it's less fun and more like, okay, we're all starving. What are we going to eat? But I enjoy it. So that's kind of our flow is, I'll come home and throw something together. So then, when I'm wrapping up my day at work, I'm already thinking about what are we going to make? And do I need to call ahead or ask my husband to get something out of the freezer for me or get it started or something like that?
Okay. Well, and on that note of having general ideas versus specific recipes, we did get a question asking so we had somebody that made the recipe beforehand and they love it.
Cool.
But we're not super excited about the artichokes. What might be a good substitution? And Heather, you can also review the substitution you made afterwards as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I love what you did, Heather, and you just threw the hearts of palm in there as an artichoke substitute. That's amazing.
They're this, let me see. I have to move my camera over. I can't even see. It's the ones that are, I guess, quartered. So I didn't even chop them up. Yeah.
Cool.
So super easy, just canned, open them up and drained them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She
Or
tasted
I
it.
guess what you could do is just leave that out because it's
Yeah.
not like baking. So it's not completely critical for the success of the entire
Absolutely.
recipe, but
Absolutely. And you can always just choose another veggie. I mean, and like Heather added spinach as well. I mean, you can never go wrong throwing a handful of greens in there. And sometimes I'll do that because I'm just out of something that a recipe calls for. So that flexibility is good.
yeah. And I love the idea of adding the greens. I wish I had thought of that. And speaking of the greens, so we got another question. Any concern over phytates or oxalates in the foods as they may inhibit absorption of calcium? Hopefully I wrote that down right.
That is a good question. I think that when you get to that point of being concerned, I mean, unless, barring any real specific health issues, my answer to that would be to kind of focus on, as long as a person is eating a wide variety of foods, they're unlikely to suffer any sort of, nutritional deficit from not absorbing one nutrient or another. So, I mean, that's what I would say. I mean, I think that, again, unless you're eating one food, you're eating spinach all day long, every meal in kind of overabundance, then there could be some concerns with, the way that nutrients absorb together or compete for absorption. So, but in general, no, that wouldn't be a concern.
That makes sense. Okay, so basically just eating the rainbow.
I'll have to do a little research, but I feel like Dr. Michael Greger has a video on this.
Okay, yeah, and Dr. Michael Greger, for you guys watching, his website is nutritionfacts.org, nutritionfacts.org, and it is amazing. I use it as a research tool all the time. Heather just put it in the chat. Okay, I've lost count on whose turn it is.
All right, let's see here. So did you ask, let's see, because I feel like you were heading this way anyway. But knowing what to do is one thing, but doing it is another. So for those, in the real world, I would say most everybody who knows that they need to be making changes, but they're really struggling with the either motivation or just life. What are your recommendations for where someone begins if they're if they're eating a standard American diet and they're at place zero, or maybe they've tried this a million times and they're like, 1,000,001, here we go. What are your recommendations for how to get started and how to do this?
So it's certainly important to discover where somebody is in their journey. So what are their goals and what are the things that they're currently doing that we're trying to change? So, for example, I had one younger patient who was like early 20s, hadn't kind of lived on his own or had to prepare his own food. And so he was eating out like all day long, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so for him, making a change meant, can we look at where you're eating out and try to pick a few kind of favorite or go-to places where we know you can get something more healthy. Like, I talked to him about making like a Chipotle run instead of going to Chick-fil-A, for example, because at Chipotle, you can get a variety of vegetables, you can get some beans, get some fiber, and get started, just shift that momentum a little bit into the direction of making really small changes. Now, that's obviously an extreme example. Most people are coming from a place of, maybe accustomed to the standard American diet, but looking for a change. So that's where I really try to say, it's, keeping in mind that we want this to be kind of feel easy and fun rather than a burden and stressful. So can we pick one day a week where you're going to do, and that's where sometimes people will do like meatless Monday, for example, or can we pick one meal that you really like right now, and can we tweak it so that it maybe has healthier ingredients. So maybe they love eating, a pasta dish. So I'll try to say, well, can we try to switch your noodles to a lentil-based pasta so that you're getting that protein and fiber and the satiety when you're eating a dish with lentil pasta, and then we can maybe remove or reduce the amount of the portion of meat that you're eating, and then can we throw some veggies in there? And then that becomes the new go-to pasta dish. So they're not like having to stretch so far out of their comfort zone and able to create a meal that they feel good about and comfortable with because it's already in their repertoire of things that they're comfortable doing.
Okay. So it's kind of just meeting everybody where they are. And and if anybody's on here, I mean, you can certainly reach out to us afterwards for help with that. If there are additional questions on that. So that we've had such an amazing discussion. I know we're running short on time, so we want to honor everybody's time, and we know you have to go get dinner ready for the family.
Tacos.
So, what is your current passion project? Is our last question for you.
So, I mean, as you can already tell, I'm passionate about helping my patients live their healthiest lives and be able to just feel their best, fuel their bodies, promote optimum health for longevity and just overall well-being. So that's what gets me excited, is any way I can help somebody do that. And one of the areas that I specialize in is to help people achieve weight loss with the help of lifestyle and diet modifications, as well as GI specific endoscopic procedures. So that's kind of where my passion lies, is working with patients who maybe are struggling with weight and working with them to make the lifestyle changes to get them there, and whether or not we use the tools of a non-surgical endoscopic procedure combined with lifestyle and dietary approach. It's individualized for each person, but that's what I'm really excited about and what I love doing in my practice. And that's really my favorite thing at this point through my plant-based journey, is that the plant-based lifestyle makes it so easy to achieve and maintain a stable and really healthy weight long-term, which of course, reduces your risk for developing all sorts of comorbidities and medical problems down the road. And so I try to just really share that with my patients, whether or not there's any massive or significant amount of overweight or obesity, or whether it's just a goal of longevity and maintaining a healthy weight for the duration of your lifespan. That's really what I'm excited about.
Well, that is amazing. Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both for having me. This was great.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time, and we really appreciate everyone that was able to join us. And we will be sending out the replay and the recipe afterwards. And Heather, do you want to add anything else before we go?
No, we, again, just echoing what you said, we just love doing these dinner with the docs. I always learn something new, and I'm going to go look up, what is that? Akkermansia? I've never heard of that. I need to
I would add one more thing.
Too.
For anyone who is interested in learning more, you both are such wonderful resources. And so I think that reaching out on, whatever platform on social media, finding people who are posting information or recipes, things that look, things that grab your attention, seek that out, because it only kind of helps provide just more information for you as you're trying to kind of transition into, optimizing your health or a plant-based lifestyle. And you can find me at drlindseymerritt.com, as well as at Dr. Lindsey Merritt on Instagram as well.
Love
it.
Awesome. And we're going to be sending out, we're going to be sending out all websites and social handles after this. We will include the resources that you spoke about, And yeah, and the other thing is I put, oh, you know what? I accidentally did not put it to everyone. Let's try this again. I was going to put in the chat the link to the events page on Dawn's website, veggieCooking.com, because we are doing this monthly for the rest of the year. So the next one is with Dr. Liz Winings, and she is a nurse practitioner, a doctorate of clinical nursing in the mental health space. So we'll be talking, it's very related to gut health because your neurotransmitters are made in the gut. And if your gut is a little broken, then you're going to have some issues with like what you talked about, your mood and all of that. So yeah, we hope you guys will join us next month, and just stay tuned for the replay and the follow-up to everything we talked about today.
Yes. Thank you so much again, everybody.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
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 All right.
Okay.
And
I
then
am unrecording here. Okay.